Now, did you know that the first self-made female millionaire was a black woman? Do you know her name? Or when did she live? Did you guess it? If not, just kick back and enjoy the footage.
Madam C.J. Walker was born Sarah Breedlove on December 23, 1867. She was the first member of her family to be born outside of slavery. Sarah longed for an education, but after the death of her parents, she moved with her sister to Vicksburg. Throughout her teens, she worked as a washerwoman, earning what she could to survive.
She had to strike out on her own at a very young age. She had to grow up very fast, and she had to become independent. So that kind of independence, I think, often creates a perseverance and a strength and a courage that other people are not called upon to make at such an early point in their lives.
When she was 17, Sarah married Moses McWilliams, a laborer. She gave birth to their daughter, Alelia, in June of 1885. 2 years later, Moses was killed in an accident. With a baby on her hip and a boat ticket in her hand, she boarded a northbound riverboat. Arriving in St. Louis in 1888, Sarah headed for the city's black community. Swelled by migrants from the Deep South, the community supported more than 100 black businesses.
Madam Walker's move to St. Louis was a very important one in the sense that St. Louis is a kind of pivotal point between the North and the South. It was southern enough that people who were southern, who were from Mississippi, could get there. It was right on the Mississippi River, still is right on the Mississippi River. Yet it was northern enough so that the weight of disfranchisement, of segregation, of extreme racism, of American apartheid was not crushing in the way that it was in the Deep South.
I think sometimes we forget that at that point there was nothing like welfare. There was no general relief. People really couldn't turn to anybody except to the church or to families in order to get money. She was a very poor woman, like many other black women at the time. And she really was in business for herself as a washerwoman and as a cook because she had to be in business for herself. There was nobody else who was going to feed her and her daughter. She was a widow. She was a single mother.
Committed to other needy members of her community and grateful for the help she had received, Sarah joined the Mite Missionary Society, an organization that assisted the impoverished. Among the society's members were a number of prominent, well-educated black women, such as Margaret Murray Washington, wife of Booker T. Washington. Sarah was dazzled by their stylish dress and formal manners, and awed by their ability to organize themselves and become community leaders.
And she was determined that her daughter would have a better life than she had had. So she made a lot of sacrifices. She washed a lot of clothes and cooked a lot of dinners for other people in order to save money to help educate her daughter.
Sarah McWilliams reflected on her own appearance. She always wore neat, crisply starched clothing, the better to advertise her skills as a laundress, but she was self-conscious about her hair.
Madam Walker really was having her own problems with her hair falling out, and she had tried other products that were already on the market, and some of those products worked a little bit and some of them didn't, and she added a couple of extra ingredients to the product, started using that on her hair, and her hair began to grow back. Many black women at the time had a problem of their hair falling out because of poor diet and stress and other kinds of scalp diseases. So Madam was like a lot of other women, and when they saw her hair growing...
Frontier. In July of 1905, she arrived at Denver's Union Depot with her savings, $1.50, about a week's pay. She found a job as a cook. In the evenings, she worked on her hair formulas, testing them on herself and others. Finally, she came up with 3 products that met her requirements. Sarah soon proved herself a natural marketer, using free demonstrations to introduce her products: vegetable shampoo, hair grower, and a light oil called glycine. She completed the demonstrations by pressing the hair with her heated metal comb.
With the hot comb, what Madam was able to do, they would heat this hot comb over an open flame. And after their hair had been washed and oiled and sectioned and combed through, then they would take the hot comb and take a small section of hair and then move the comb along the section of hair. And it would smooth the person's hair out so that it would be easier to comb and easier to style.
She began to promote her products through newspapers and traveling demonstrations, but Sarah's best advertisement was herself. A customer who looked at a before picture and then at Sarah herself could not help but be impressed.
So really the demand was created because she was looking so great, and she realized that other people would pay her to make the products and to use the products on their hair. So she really developed a business out of necessity.
Sarah had stayed in touch with a St. Louis friend, Charles Joseph Walker, known to all as CJ. Already fond of each other, CJ moved to Denver, and the two soon decided to marry. Sarah began calling herself Madam C.J. Walker, not only to identify her marital status, but to give her products more appeal. Madam Walker believed that if they only knew about it, women all over the country would buy her products. Accordingly, she made plans for an extended sales trip. On the road, Walker trained agents who could demonstrate and take orders for Walker products in return for a share of the profits. Within a few months, Walker was making weekly sales of $35, more than twice the salary of the average white American male worker, and 20 times that of the average black woman worker. In 1908, Walker moved her base of operations to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Here, she and her daughter opened a beauty parlor and a training school for Walker agents, which they called Lelia College. Over the years, Lelia College turned out scores of hair culturists, most of whom were delighted with their new careers.
One of the things that made Madam Walker very successful as her business grew was that she surrounded herself with other people who offered the expertise that she needed. She hired 2 young lawyers who were very smart and who helped her manage her business. She hired a woman who had been a teacher to be her tutor, to teach her social graces, who also had some management ability and could manage other women in her factory.
Within a year of her arrival in India, Walker announced a set of impressive statistics. Her company now had 950 agents nationwide and a monthly income of $1,000. She became a patron of the arts, often hosting concerts, poetry readings, and other social affairs.
Madam was able to do was to allow women to go into business for themselves. So they were able to have a little bit of extra money that allowed them to buy homes for their families or to contribute to the buying of homes for their families. It allowed them to educate their children, and it allowed them to begin to see themselves in a role that was different than being a slave or being a servant for somebody else.
In late 1916, Walker began offering her courses to black colleges throughout the South. Students learned the history of black hairstyling and Walker's self-improvement philosophies.